I'd also like to indicate that I've met, I'm a bit of an Anglophile, and we have a member of the Parliament who has a major responsibility there, and I was glad to make his acquaintance and look forward to working with him as well. And Erfam, I don't understand. How in the hell did these guys let an engineer become president of anything? You must be the only non-doctor in the crowd here. I mean, aren't you? Well, we don't count him. We count his wife. His wife is, every senator and congressman needs a personal psychiatrist. She is my personal psychiatrist.
Well, some have doctors. I've got a psychiatrist. Doctors and psychiatrists. We badly, badly need that. So anything wrong in my thinking, blame doctors.
Let me say at the outset, one of the things I find in my years in the United States Senate, the most unintentionally insulting things that can be done with a group of Americans who have an ethnic anchor in another part of the world is whenever you speak to them, to only speak to them about that country. Because I understand your interests are multifold. I do understand that your interest in civil rights and civil liberties is profound. I'm going to be presumptuous. For 17 years, I was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee before I became chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. I have fought along with you every step of the way to deal with the barriers that have been placed and with the hysteria that occurred after 9/11, totally unjustified action taken relative to Arab Americans generically and Pakistanis specifically. We could talk about that. We could talk about that the whole day. We could talk about the immigration policy that, in fact, I think has been counterproductive, not productive, but actually counterproductive. We should be guaranteeing, for example, that everyone who graduates from an American university with an advanced degree automatically gets 7 years of a green card. I want you staying here. I don't want you going anywhere else. I mean, there's a whole range of things we can and should be doing that we're doing counterproductively in the moment of initially understandable but not understandable hysteria any longer. I realize we could stand here and talk about the judicial independence of the Pakistani court, and I've met with the lawyers committee. I've met when we could spend the whole afternoon talking about that, and it's an interest to many of you. And I understand we could be talking about economic reform, but ladies and gentlemen, I think at this moment in the history of transition, and I like the way the ambassador phrased it, because selfishly, as he and I sat down, we were kidding each other whether or not he's read my speeches before he wrote his book or I read his books before he wrote my speeches. Because truly, the phrase he used is one that and I'm not sure I'm the only one, but have been using now for some time. This is a historical moment of transition in Pakistan. Let me say that again. This is a historical moment of transition. We are at an inflection point. The engineer knows what an inflection point is. He remembers his calculus. That the truth of the matter is, we're at a point now, it's like when you're driving your automobile, when you're turning left to right, at one moment you're going dead straight. Once you commit, you've committed. And that's where we are now. In Pakistani history, the people of Pakistan are at an inflection point. What happens between now and the next free election called by a parliament is going to determine the fate of Pakistan for a generation. And so what I want to talk to you about today is what role, if any, can the United States of America play in ensuring that, if not, we can't ensure anything, in moving in the direction of being a positive force, that we are able to, 4 years from now, whenever the next parliamentary election is called, celebrate a second peaceful transition to democratic rule. The first is not enough, Doctor. The first does not tell the story. The second is what you look at. And so what this is all about for me is what in the very near term, meaning the next 1, 3, 5 years, can be done constructively to aid in that transition. Because not only is Pakistan at stake, the subcontinent of India is at stake. U.S. interests are at stake. This is the single most profound relationship we must get right in the next 4 to 5 years. We can argue that there are other longer-term relationships that need to be gotten right, but I can think of nothing more urgent, and this is not hyperbole, nothing more urgent than getting this relationship right. And for far too long, the U.S.-Pakistani relationship has been in desperate need of serious overhaul, in my view. For too many years, through too many administrations, it's been an unsteady balancing act in one of the most turbulent spots on earth. In the last year alone, and I realize I'm preaching to the choir, as they say in Christian churches, in the last decade alone, we've seen the resurgence of the Taliban on both sides of the Afghan border, with violence directed increasingly at Pakistani targets. We've seen a state of emergency opposed by General Musharraf, setting off a constitutional crisis. We've seen the assassination of a woman I called and believed to be and was a friend of mine, Benazir Bhutto, who I was privileged to know. We've seen the return of a democratic government, which is a wonderful testament to Benazir's legacy, in my view, but which now faces the very same challenges that have beset all previous regimes. The core of the problem is this, in my view. The relationship between the United States and Pakistan has been largely transactional since the early 50s. And this transaction isn't working for either the United States or Pakistan. From the American perspective, we've spent billions of dollars, and from the perspective of Americans, we have gotten far too little in return. From the Pakistani perspective, America is an unreliable ally that will abandon Pakistan the moment it's convenient to do so, and whose support to date has done little more than bolster unrepresentative rulers, whether they have been civilian or military. We believe, on this side of the ocean, we believe we're paying too much and getting too little. Pakistanis believe exactly the opposite. And both sides feel the cost of the relationship may soon outweigh the benefits. To state the obvious, the status quo is unsustainable in my view. We've got to move from this transactional relationship, the exchange of aid for services, to a type of normal, functional relationship that we enjoy with all of our other military allies and friendly nations. Like any major policy shift, to gain long-term benefits, we have to shoulder transitional cost. And here's how I see it. Here's what I see to be the central elements of a new plan that's required. First, in my view, we have to triple non-security aid to $1.5 billion annually and make this a long-term commitment unconditionally for the next 10 years. Ladies and gentlemen, this aid must be unconditional to demonstrate to the people of Pakistan that our pledge is to the Pakistani people, not to a single leader. Instead of funding military hardware, this $1.5 million